A lady named Melissa, and she was a president of my local RIA group, a Long Island Real Estate Investment Association. And I got her aside one day and I'm like, listen, at the time I was like 25 years old. I'm like, listen, I have a little bit in the bank. I've been saving. If you were in my position and you could do it all over again, she's very successful in real estate, what would you do? And she's told me this and left me with this. And I was out on my own. She said, I would use a 203K loan, put 3.5% down, buy a house, live in it for a year, move out, rent it out, and then use the equity in it to buy another house.
Welcome to the House Hacking Success Podcast, where you'll learn the path to free rent and financial freedom through real estate. Featuring your hosts, Brad Labrie and Drew Klingler.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Drew. Drew, how are you doing today?
Great, Brad. How you doing?
I'm doing amazing, man. We had Matt Porcaro here on the show today, and it was phenomenal. I learned a lot. I know you learned a lot. Today, we're going to talk about the 203K loan, which has a special place in my heart because I personally did it. Me and Matt used the 203K loan to appreciate a property over six figures, which is amazing. He's going to talk about a lot of the pitfalls that newbies get into. He talks about the three things that newbies get stuck on. He talks about how you can speed line the 203K. And he also talks about a 60-second hack to find qualified 203K lenders, which is amazing.
Yeah, Matt had a lot of great tips in this podcast. One thing that I really liked is he gave a lot of resources, online resources, ways to build teams, find the right lenders, find the right contractors, find the right people just to work with. There was a lot of very useful tips to make your job easier.
Absolutely. And he talked about how 203K buyers can speedline the process as far as getting to the front line, beating out cash buyers, beating out conventional buyers. He gave so many great tips. I'm so happy and thrilled to get our listeners this podcast.
Yeah, it was a great podcast. I think everyone's going to like this one.
Absolutely. Well, without further ado, let's jump into it. Welcome to the podcast, Matt. We appreciate you being here today.
Thanks, guys. I'm really excited to get on here, talk about, any way I could help the audience, help you guys. Super stoked to be here.
Cool, man. I follow all your content, a lot of your work at the 203K way, which is, for the people that don't know, the 203K is a specific loan. And I feel like today, us and our audience are going to learn a lot today.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm here to drop all the knowledge I can. I'm an open book, guys. So
awesome.
Just so you know, there's nothing I keep secret. There's nothing I keep only for, certain people or I'm an open book. For sure.
So Matt, tell us a little bit about your background before real estate.
Cool. So, I grew up, my family had their own small general contracting company, kind of handyman company. So I always kind of grew up in the construction industry. That being said, always saw a lot of ups and downs. My dad had his own company, but nothing big. It's him and maybe another guy. Ran a lot of work as a general contractor. So growing up, I just saw a lot of volatility in finances. That's not to say we were poor by any means. My dad worked hard and continues to work hard to support our family, but just a lot of volatility, a lot of inconsistency, and there was a lot of good times, but there was a lot of bad. And I'm sure you guys can agree. It's like when you're young, sometimes the bad stuff is what sits in your head a little more. I always had that instilled in me that I didn't want to have to live like that. And, that being said, I did what the system tells you to do, right? Like, went to high school, did pretty good there, did okay, was an okay student, not the best, not the worst. And found out that, I went to my guidance counselor, and me being money focused, my whole life, just always that being a soft spot. I was like, hey, what are the best ways to make money? Like, who makes the most money? Where we kind of met was, engineering seemed to be some of the highest paying jobs out of college. And just so happened I was a pretty big computer nerd in high school, and electrical engineering kind of sounded pretty cool. I was pretty good at science, and so I went that route. I went to college for electrical engineering, got in and out of there in 4 years, man. I learned very quickly. I was not like as analytical as maybe I thought I was going through an electrical engineering degree, but I made it out alive in 4 years, which many people didn't show up to my graduation. So that was my first task. But essentially what happened during those 4 years is I realized very quickly, I got my first internship and I'm like, I don't think a 9 to 5 is the way to be rich. And, for a lot of people, it's kind of like these days with Instagram and everything, like, you're talking 10 years ago, like you didn't have your Gary V's walking around and your Grant Cardones and stuff trying to preach this stuff. Like back then it was still kind of before that. And like, unless you knew like a rich person, you really didn't understand, or at least I didn't coming from my upbringing, like how do people get rich, right? Led us to, none other than Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Found that book, was told it was the best book to really kind of understand money and the way that it worked. So I attribute a lot of my learning about real estate to that book. And essentially what that started in me was realizing that like, okay, I have a 9 to 5, but that's not going to get me to where I want to be as far as financial security is concerned. So that put me on this money making, voyage to which I failed all over the place. I think right out of college, I started the penny stock fiasco. I did affiliate marketing, trying to make money online a slew of different ways, selling things on eBay, e-commerce, whatever guru online money making course is out there. There's a good chance I took it. I'm probably the most gullible person with that stuff, and tried it all and spent a lot of money, wasted a lot of time. Not wasted a lot of time. I don't regret any of it because it brought me to where I am today. But essentially the long and short of it was I realized that real estate was probably the best thing to get into through Rich Dad, Poor Dad. But again, me not really knowing this, me not really knowing like how it all worked, I thought real estate was like for rich old dudes, right? That had like a ton of money. And like, I couldn't fathom buying multiple houses. I couldn't even fathom buying one house, right? And I found wholesaling, right? Through that, I found like, oh, wait, I could get into real estate with no money down or no credit or whatever. So I tried that for a long time, got very discouraged. My market, whatever it was, I tried everything for whatever reason, not knocking it, but it didn't work for me. Tried finding ways to flip houses with no money down, looking for those unicorn seller financing deals, whatever. Fell on my face with that. Did a lot of courses, a lot of mentorships, everything. 3 years of it, spent tens of thousands of dollars on courses. Eventually found a lady a lady named Melissa, and she was a president of my local RIA group, a Long Island Real Estate Investment Association. And I got her aside one day and I'm like, listen, at the time I was like 25 years old. I'm like, listen, I have a little bit in the bank. I've been saving. If you were in my position and you could do it all over again, she's very successful in real estate, what would you do? And she's told me this and left me with this. And I was out on my own. She said, I would use a 203K loan, put 3.5% down, buy a house, live in it for a year, move out, rent it out, and then use the equity in it to buy another house. I had no idea what any of those words meant, but I took it to heart. And I took it to heart, and really, I think I just it stuck with me because this is someone that I trusted, and success leaves clues. And this is someone that I was like, listen, if she's not telling me the right thing, then I don't know what. And I chased that rabbit, and that was finally the one that after pretty much 10 years of failing, that was the one that opened the door for me.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Now, what was that first deal like, the 203K first deal, after you talked to her?
Oh, man. It was, it took a couple years off my life, probably, in stress, anxiety, lost a lot of money on it, paying for things that I didn't need to do because of a lot of things that were beyond my control at the time, but things that I make sure to educate people on now, like picking the right lender, picking the right team member, picking the right mortgage broker, everything like that. Yeah, it was a small nightmare, but in retrospect, it was still worth every penny. I mean, I would endure double the stress that I did if I would do it all over again, just because of how much came out of it. It was very stressful. Put me in the hospital in terms of I had my first anxiety attack. I'm not trying to scare anyone here, but I just want to let people know that, like, the thing I'm trying to drive home is there's a reason why not everybody's doing this, but at the same time, what I've learned since I've kind of become an expert in this is that there are ways to do this where it goes streamlined and it goes very quickly. And I know people, and I've been introduced to people in the industry now that are making it very easy for people to do. And part of what I'm here and what I'm trying to do with the 203K way and my community is letting people know how to do it the right way from the start. That way they can take advantage of this program and learn from all of my mistakes. But yeah, it was very stressful. But I could dig more into it wherever you guys want to hear more about it for sure.
Yeah. What are the qualifications? What's the down payment and credit score? What do you need to get a 203K loan?
Yeah, so the basics of it is it's an FHA loan, right? So FHA insured loans are, in many cases, people that get an FHA loan are typically anyone that put down less than 20% when they buy a house, right? So, 203K loan is a specific FHA loan where you're able to wrap the rehab cost of buying a property into the loan. So take it another step, it allows you to buy houses that are in bad shape, foreclosure properties, distressed properties, properties that people that are looking to get into investing or looking to make a good financial decision, you buy some property with some meat on the bone. The 203K loan allows you to do that. And so the qualifications for it are just like an FHA, which is it needs a minimum of it. The credit score is the least of your worries on this, but the credit score somewhere is around, like, I've heard as low as 580, I've heard as high as 620. But I would advise you being over 600 at least. You need a debt to income ratio of about 50%, which basically means that your loans and like your student loans, car payments, revolving loans like that, can only be 50% of your gross income before taxes. You need your down payment, which would be 3.5% of the total of the purchase price of the house plus the forecasted rehab expense. So, for example, if you buy a house for $100,000, from the seller, plus it needs $50,000 of work, you would need to put 3.5% down minimum of that $150,000 loan. All right.
Okay. Where does the estimated rehab cost come from? Who's estimating that?
Cool. So, so this is where it gets, this is where you have to really know what you're doing and where it gets, a little more complicated in the sense that when you go out and you look for houses, right? And you look for houses that need work, when you do your estimates, there's a couple different things that you can do. Number one, and what I would advise now, something I didn't do, but now talking to a lot of really experienced 203K consultants, is that you should hire a 203K consultant who is basically an inspector that is certified through the FHA. Okay. And what their job is to do is do a feasibility study on houses when you are looking to buy it. Basically saying they go in, they review the house, they give you a cost estimate of what the work is going to be to get the house up to snuff for the bank to approve the loan. Then anything additionally on top of that would be anything like cosmetic that you want on top of it, right? So they give you a feasibility study basically saying, hey, you need X amount of dollars just to get this thing in a livable condition, if it's not in a livable condition already, right? The second thing is like something that you really desire, like on your really important list. And then your last is like your would like type of things. But a 203K consultant is going to be your best bet on it. Now, that isn't to say if you have a friend that's a contractor or something like that, when you're going around looking and searching for properties, that you can bring this 203K consultant in. Until you're in contract with a property, the 203K consultant will just be working independently for you. And then once you go into contract, then they're working as part of the loan. They get fees based on, the way that the loan closes, the size of the loan, stuff like that. But basically, the way to figure that out is working with a 203K consultant, which is very easy to find. You just Google 203K consultants.
Okay.
You can go on the HUD website. It's going to give you a directory, and you just look up your state. I would only look by state, not by town, because it's only going to give the town where they reside. So go by state, look for the closest towns to your area where you're looking to buy, and their phone number's right there. Call them up, say, hey, listen, I'm looking to do a 203K loan in your area. Are you willing to come check out a couple of properties with me? And they'd be more than happy to. Obviously, for a fee, a couple $100 every time they go out, or maybe you could work something out with them.
That's great advice. That's great advice, because I also did a 203K loan, and no one really knows anything about it. Specifically, if you just walk into the local bank. And so I had a lot of the problems that you had. I had no idea what was going on. I had to figure it out myself. So with that consultant, great information. Is that the best way to pick contractors, is taking their advice?
Yeah. So a couple things go into this with picking contractors. So I would say, even to dial it back, I think we skipped ahead a step. Before anything, you want to make sure that you're finding the right lenders, and a lender that is super experienced with doing 203Ks, right? They are out there. Word of advice to anyone listening to this is, writing loans puts dinner on these loan officers' tables, right? So at the end of the day, they're doing anything for leads. They're doing anything to make a deal. They will tell you they know how to do it, okay? And that's what I experienced. He's like, oh, this is easy, no problem. Our office does it.
Yep.
Come to realization when it took 4 months to close, that no one in the office had any idea what they were doing. It was very. I almost lost the deal on 2 occasions, and it literally came down to the loan officer going and pleading with the guy because he happened to be a family friend of mine. And he went through it. But the first step of this is to find an experienced 203K lender. First thing you do when you're looking for these lenders is just ask them how many they've done, and ask them for references. Honestly, you want to be stringent with this. You don't trust me. Again, take it from me, who had a panic attack over this thing because of working with the wrong lender. I've now met a couple great lenders that do these day in, day out. I've met, I have one guy that works out of New Jersey. He's closing them in 30 days, which is insane. And it really comes down to that lender first and foremost. But to go back to the contractors, so yeah, I mean, you have a couple different options with picking contractors. I would say the most important thing before you even start looking at contractors is get that 203K consultant in there, because that 203K consultant is going to give you a couple things. They're going to give you a line item by line item scope of work. Okay. So there's going to be no lost in translation, communication issues between what needs to be done on the property. Every line item is going to tell you exactly what needs to be done and specifics. It'll say, retile bathroom, 100 square feet of X tile. And then next to that line item will be labor, and it'll be material. And now it's going to go all the way through the list of whatever it is: flooring, walls, moving walls, repairs, electrical, all that stuff. The more specific, the better. That 203K consultant is going to write that up. They're going to give you a feasibility and a cost study. So now you're going to have numbers. You're already going to know, like, ballpark, what's this going to be. Now what you can do is you can take that scope of work. Kind of what they'll do is they'll send it back to you. You can either white out the numbers, or they should be able to send it back to you with blank numbers. And now you have a worksheet. So now any contractors you have, obviously always start with personal references, right? Go to your friends and family. If they had a good contractor that they really liked, bring them on to do it. Sometimes the lender will have a list. Sometimes the 203K consultant will have some people. And then when all else fails, man, just go on Home Advisor, Angie's List, one of those things. But it makes it very easy. Bring all the contractors in one day, hand them all this scope of work, takes all the guesswork out of it, tell them, fill out the blanks, tell me what it's going to be, tell me what it's going to be in labor from you, what it's going to be in material from you, and hand it back to me. You're going to get leveled bids, making sure everyone's on the same page, and you'll make sure that you're finding the best contractor that way.
That's awesome, man. Great information. Great information. One of the things you and I get asked a lot is, with the 203K loan, does it require me to be my primary residence?
Yes. So with any FHA loan, the reason you're getting this opportunity to only put 3.5% down, still get a decent interest rate, is because the whole point of this loan, the reason it came out was to boost the economy, right? It's to boost home ownership. Home ownership is always going to be good for the economy. And then the 203K was another level of that. And it was like, not only to boost the economy, boost home ownership, but also to get some of these crappy houses off the market, right? You know, you have a lot of people that maybe they want to move into an area, but then, you know, they're missing all these opportunities of houses that, you know, like in my example, it was literally a crack house. Like it was literally like they were selling drugs out of the front of it. It was a disaster. It was really bad. And, you know, the town was actually super happy, like made permitting very easy. That's another thing to consider, guys. Like, you're taking, when you go to the town, they are ecstatic to see that you're taking a really junky house that might be and taking it and making it really nice. It's just it's gonna help the community overall. So
for sure. And a lot of people don't know that.
Right. Oh yeah. And that's, you know, it's helping everybody. It's helping your neighbors, it's helping the town, it's helping the community. So a lot of good goes into this. So that being said, you know, investors always get the short end of the stick because they are doing it strictly for profit, whereas someone that's going into this is a first-time home buyer or something like that, or they're looking to move into a house, make it their own. That's why they do this loan. Now, that being said, you know, I look at it like this. It's not for everybody. In my position, I was willing to make the sacrifice, live in the house. I wasn't married to an area, wasn't married to a community. The way I looked for it is like, listen, I'll live in it for as long as I need to, if I need to. And then when I'm ready to move out, you know, I'm going to have a property that's going to be a 2-family and it's going to cash flow pretty healthily, which it Absolutely. Now is doing. I no longer Absolutely. Live there. And, you know, it's been doing great so far. So the FHA, the rule is you need to be there at least for a year. You have to say you're going in there with the intention of living there for a year. After that, you're kind of out of it. And, you know, things happen. Life happens. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool. So, Matt, let's say like this house is just totally trash, not move-in ready at all, and you just closed on it. Is there a time limit that you have to move, or do you just have to make it your primary residence and then eventually move into it when it's move-in ready?
There's no time limit or no, you know, it's when you're ready to go in, right?
Okay.
So, you know, in my case, the rehab was big. I mean, mine was $100,000 rehab, so it was hefty, right? Not everybody's going to be like this. Like I said, mine was really, really bad shape, right? So the rehab took 8 months after closing. So, you know, that right there was like, took a big chunk out of that year. And then, you know, very shortly after, I was able to refinance and, you know, was kind of intending to live there. And then, like I said, life happened. You know, I actually just got engaged. Me and my wife wanted to. Yeah, thanks. Well, it was back then. Now we're married now. So
okay.
That sort of worked out well. Yeah. But yeah, we moved in together. We were getting ready for the wedding, everything like that. Moved out and very quickly actually filled out both of the units and rented both of those out. Cash flowing very well with them. So there's no time limit with you getting in there. Again, you're going into this. You're going into this with the knowledge that you're going to be in there, whether it be for a short time, long time. I know this podcast is based on house hacking. I mean, this is the best way to live for free, man.
I agree.
You know, I didn't have to, even, you know, the short time I was there making that my residence, I didn't have to pay a mortgage. My tenant covered it.
Absolutely.
You know, I had maybe like $200 or something like that, like on the top. But
right.
I mean, who would love, I mean, to live in an awesome area, 3-bedroom for $200 a month. I mean, it's a no-brainer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I get this question asked a lot, specifically people using FHA loans or 203K loans. We're in such a hot market, right? And there are a lot of cash buyers, people that take on cash from private money and things of that nature. A lot of people are using conventional loans. How do you advise people when making 203K offers in such a hot market to compete with these other cash buyers and conventional buyers?
So here's the thing. All right, so let me think of the best way to answer this. All right, so let me answer this in 2 phases. First one is, one of the cool things about the 203K is it being an owner occupant loan is there's actually programs out there that are trying to push this. And what that is in many cases, so Fannie Mae has something called the first look period. Okay, so if a Fannie Mae foreclosure goes on the market, you can find these at homestyle.com. or not, I'm sorry, not homestyle.com, homepath.com. There's a Freddie Mac one version of that too. HUD Home Store is like another one. But basically, when a new federal foreclosure hits the market, you have a 10-day grace period of the bank only accepting offers of owner-occupying loans. So that's actually what happened with mine. When it went on, no investor was able to come on. And really, it's kind of federally mandated. Now, it's not 100% true. I'm sure the bank could get away from it if they wanted to. But at the reality of it is that they pretty much have to accept any reasonable offer that comes in during that 10-day period. Because again, the government wants to get home ownership. They don't want another investor to flip it, risk having them bring it on and make it become a slumlord, buy the property, not take care of it. They want an owner occupant. They know with owner occupants they have a better chance of the property being managed and treated right. So that's the first thing, right? So that's a good thing to know, is that owner occupied loans are not a bad thing. Here's the second thing. Because you're only putting 3.5% down, because you're typically paying a much lower interest rate than anyone that's coming in there with hard money, something like that. Your cash on cash return, the amount of money you're putting down is allowing you to really come in at pretty much close to full asking, right? The way that it's going right now is like, I'm working with some people right now that are doing 203K loans, and I'm helping them out with it. And they're able to come in like at ask, and it's still being a good deal for them because they're only coming out of pocket with like, maybe $9,000, $8,000, whatever. If you're an investor, you have to put down the down payment. You have to put down at least 20%, 30%, depending. You're paying crazy interest rates if you're using hard money. You're talking like 9, 10%. There's holding costs that are involved, all this stuff that are making it a lot easier for you to get in versus them. So It kind of puts you in a sweet spot. So that's another thing that people should really understand is like, doing this, like having all these really awesome pros on top of the loan make it very easy for you to compete with these guys.
Absolutely.
Well, can you tell us about PMI, what that costs, and can you refinance out of that?
Yeah. So absolutely. So PMI in the 203K loans or any FHA loans are basically mortgage interest payments. All right. So essentially that's what the FHA is, right? The FHA doesn't write the actual loans. They just write the guidelines for the loans, and the banks have to abide by those guidelines. So part of your mortgage payment every month when you're a subprime borrower, subprime meaning you're putting down less than 20%, meaning you're not a conventional mortgage, you're a high risk borrower, right? So what you trade off for that is you pay a couple extra $100 a month. I always forget the exact points. I believe it's like 1.5% per year based on the principal left on the loan. So it equates to a couple $100 a month, just for sake of example here. But, essentially what you're doing is you are in a community pool. It's like insurance, right? So everyone pays a small amount. And then when people do default left and right, it's coming out of that. So you're basically pooling in everyone that has an FHA loan is paying $300 a month into the bucket, right? The FHA foreclosure bucket, right? So that being said, FHA is notorious for having PMI for the length of the loan. Okay. So if you don't refinance out, you're going to pay PMI mortgage interest that couple $100 a month until either you hit 20% equity and you could refinance out, or if you just are either an inexperienced borrower or never really hit 20% equity for God knows what reason, you will just pay that for the life of the loan. Now, in my case, I made sure when I picked a property that I was going to build in enough equity during the rehab process that I'd be able to refinance out immediately, right? That's kind of the strategy that I try to teach people, is to look for something that that the ARV at the end is going to give you enough to get out of that immediately. And that's what I did.
And for people that don't know, what is enough?
Enough is 20%. Absolutely. So you need 20% of equity on the after rehab value. So for example, if you buy the house for 100, you put 50 into it, you want to make sure, I think 250 would be plenty, right? Or 200 would be plenty. So if it reappraises at the end of that rehab for 200, you can refinance out immediately. And in some cases, with a 203K, you can't do a cash out refinance. And in many cases, I wouldn't advise that. What I actually ended up doing was taking out a home equity line of credit on it, because that way I can just use the money as needed, rather than just having all that cash and having to pay every month on that.
Awesome. So I know you talk to your listeners about the 3 things that newbie investors get stuck on, which are can you use a 203K loan multiple times? Can you buy it in an LLC? What about my team? How do I build a team? A lot of people get stuck on that. Can you speak to that?
Oh yeah. So this is a soft subject for me. These are a lot of questions that I get. And one of the things that took me a long time to understand and teach myself, and I'm still telling myself this every day, is the obstacle is the way, right? It's a quote that I live by now.
Great book too.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's Marcus Aurelius, right? The impediment of action creates action, right? Marcus Aurelius is that Roman, emperor or whatever he was, but philosopher too. And basically what that means is the obstacle ahead of you is the direction you need to be going in, not the obstacle somewhere else, right? So what people end up coming to me, ask me, they're like, how many times can I use a 203K? And what drives me nuts about that question is you don't even know what the 203K can do for you alone, because you haven't started it yet. Can you use a 203K multiple times? Yes, but why would you? There's no reason to, right? You're using it as a way to jumpstart your real estate buying career. You're using it, if you use it in the right way, you leverage it in ways that, I did, the way that Brad did. You can basically open up so many doors for yourself. So I don't want people to get caught on like a dumb question like that. No offense to anyone that's asked me that question, but it's just, I can say it because these are things that I worried about. And these are things that, like, in retrospect, I shouldn't have wasted time worrying about. Just get it done, and you're going to see how many doors open in front of you. Can you buy in an LLC? No. People get stuck on this LLC thing in real estate. I don't know what it is. There's a couple, like, I don't know I wouldn't call them old wives' tales, right? But there's like these couple, like, the last 2 things that I'm going to get at here. There's like a couple things that just are like siphoning people's energy in the beginning real estate investing guru world, as you'd call it, right? And these things drive me nuts, because these are, again, I can speak on it because these are the things that I put before that were impeding my action. They weren't getting me anywhere. They were just things that I was pretending to do to pretend to get somewhere. Can you buy in an LLC? People are opening LLCs before they even have a subject property. It's a huge
pet peeve of mine, because people ask me this all the time. Should I get an LLC? I'm like, dude, you only have one house. What are you protecting against?
Right. Exactly. So can you buy it in an LLC? No, because it's an owner-occupied loan, and they'll never let that fly. Do you need to buy it in an LLC? No. It's your first house, your second house. When you're Grant Cardone and you have, $100 million in real estate under your belt, then you could talk about law and liability and all that stuff. But don't make it an issue before it's an issue. And that's getting me to the third thing: building a team. Building a team is one of the biggest time wasters in the real estate investing education space. People will definitely disagree with me on this. I'm polarizing in saying that. Building a team is ridiculous, because you have people that are going out asking for favors before they're providing any value. Hey, contractor, if you, I'm an aspiring investor. Will you be on my team of contractors? So when my next deal comes up, you'll be there. They'll be like, okay, sure. Like, I don't know. And then they're going to hang up the phone. A lawyer, all these people, until you bring them a deal, until you bring them something real, until you've shown your value to them in one way or another, it's irrelevant. It's a waste of time. Don't waste your time building a team, cold calling realtors, lawyers, brokers, all that stuff. Call them when you need them. When I bought my 203K, I had no realtor, I had no lawyer, I had no mortgage guy practically. I had no contractor, I had no 203K consultant. But it's funny how things work. The obstacle is the way, right? Action creates more action. I found the house. My lender's like, I got a realtor. Brought on a realtor. Realtor, who's a good lawyer to use? Here's the guy I use. Okay, who's the 203K consultant to use? We use her. Okay, good, good. It's funny how it falls into place. The team will build itself, guys, but you have to bring value first.
And as you get, as you grow, you can then add people to your team. But people get so caught up on these things that it impedes action.
Yes, and that's what I'm trying to drive home, guys, is that don't get caught up on the 80-20 rule, right? What's the 20% that's going to do 80% of the action? In this case, it's finding the property and putting an offer on it. That's all that work of going through LLC nonsense, trying to build a team, calling all these people, getting hung up on all this stuff, which is really not getting you anywhere, versus putting an offer on a property. All of a sudden you have a whole team overnight.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
Great advice.
Thanks.
All right. So we may have covered this, but can you tell me about your 60-second hack to find experienced 203K lenders?
Oh, yeah. So this is a good one. I learned about this recently. So there's this thing called a 203K endorsement report. And it's as easy as Googling it. You just go online, 203K endorsement report. It's going to bring you to the HUD website. And what it does is it gives you a report. There's a report that goes out every month. Again, this is a good thing about it being a public federal loan is you get all the public information on it. But essentially what it is it's going to give you a list every month of all the 203K loans that were insured that month and by what lending company it was and in what market. So it goes down by market. So for example, if you live in Cincinnati, right, you can go on there, you can look up Cincinnati and you can see which mortgage company did the most 203K loans in that market that month. So you're getting up to the date analysis on who is doing these loans. And like I said in the beginning of this podcast, that is the most important thing, is getting the right lender under your belt. So who better than the one that's doing the most of these in your market? That is going to be like a knock out of the park. And like I said, take 60 seconds to do. And all you do is you find that company, you go online, you Google their name, you call them up, and you say, who's in charge of doing 203K loans in Cincinnati? And do not hang up. There's going to be people that are like, well, I do them. No. Do call back a couple times, make sure you're getting the right person. You don't want to get someone that's trying to snipe other people's business. There's someone there that specializes in 203K loans. Maybe one or two people that are doing it in that office, but make sure that you keep calling until you find that person, and you'll know when it's the right person. You'll just see how they're talking to you.
That's an incredible advice, because as you and I know with our experiences, I mean, it's hair pulling going through that process. It took me almost 3 months. It took you almost 4 months to go through the process, and almost strictly, from my opinion, because of the lender.
It was 100,000%. Yep.
Yeah, and like you said, your buddy does them in almost 30 days or whatever. I mean, that's incredible. That's incredible, and that can save people, so much stress through the process.
Oh yeah.
So Matt, tell us a little about your books. I know you read like we do. What is your favorite business or mindset book?
Oh man, so there's a book that I just read, and it's left a lasting impression on me, and it's called U Squared, like U to the second power. It's by a guy named Price Pritchett. I actually have it right here next to me. It's very short, as you can see. It's like, quick read. You could read it in a couple hours, but essentially what it's about is kind of what I was talking about before, that obstacle is the way thing, that like basically making quantum leaps in your life, right? Doing things out of character, doing things that I think what they're trying to drive home in the book is like any good that people have done, any big, big accomplishments anyone's made in their life, they weren't 100% prepared for. They weren't 50% prepared for it. They maybe had 20% of an idea of what they wanted to do. And when I think back after reading that book, I'm like, man, that's what that 203K loan was for me. All I had was one nugget and I had a direction, but I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. Brad can attest to this. There is zero information about this loan out there. There's no one doing it. And I just had to have faith in myself that I was going to figure it out along the way. And that's exactly what I did. and it was the best decision of my life. But I'm trying to realize that I could apply that to every aspect of my life, right? It's in this day and age with analysis paralysis, there's so much information with the internet and all these things, and I get caught in it all the time. Like I try to learn something 100% before jumping into it, and the reality is you'll never even get close. So the best way to really learn how to do something and really see the benefit is just do it, right? It's Nike, right? Like they really have a good slogan there. Like
Absolutely.
just get after it, man. You'll learn it. Like don't worry about can you do the 203K multiple times? No, who cares? Like just get in
Do
it.
it once.
Get going.
Figure
Get
it
going,
out.
start, and then worry. Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
Cool. That's really good. What's your favorite real estate book?
Oh man, so it's broken record in this industry, but Rich Dad Poor Dad. Like I
Nice.
think for anyone that's like me that kind of grew up like grew up in a blue collar family, like don't know that type of you're just not around that type of thinking, right? There's so many people that get brought up to like hate the man, right? Like hate big corporations, hate rich people, and it's like they're not doing anything wrong. They just know we just are taught money differently, being like kind of in a middle class, and school surely doesn't teach you about anything with money. They just teach you how to regurgitate information. So Rich Dad Poor Dad, number one. I think also another great book that I could say probably had the most. I've read a lot of real estate books, man, and I'd like, I don't want to sound like condescending saying this, but a lot of them are not very actionable. But one that is very actionable is the book on rental properties by Brendan Turner, Bigger Pockets. I think that was probably one of the best books that I read that I felt like actually helped me do what I wanted to do, which was to become a landlord. Again, I grew up in
Is that the managing rental properties?
Managing, right? You're right. The book on
Got it
managing
right here, literally right next to
man.
me.
Yep.
Good book.
It's like, and it's a great book, right? I mean, it's coming from someone like me. No one in my extended family was ever a landlord. I had no one to go to about this, and I picked up that book. I'm like, let's try this one, and it was just so good. And knock on wood, man, I've had the same tenants in for 3 years. They pay on time every month, the first of the month.
What were a few of those actionable steps that you talked about?
Oh man, just like making sure like good ways to find like screen tenants, find tenants, what to write in your lease to make sure you get the right people. A lot of stuff like driving home, like the way that you're supposed to field service calls, like stuff like that. Like just I think the big thing is like a lot of people become a landlord and they don't know how to treat it like a business. And that book teaches you how to treat it like a business. It doesn't make it a hobby. It gives you the framework of like how to make sure that you run it right from the front end. I think I can attribute a lot of my tenants being great tenants with me being extremely strict on the front end.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there was one lady that came close to coming in, and like, God, thank God I didn't take her, but I felt it was one of those things. You kind of get stuck. She had a sob story. I'm human. Like I felt really bad for her, and like she's like, I was close to giving her the benefit of the doubt, and it was just like, on paper she was just a mess, and it was like, I just got done, like I said, doing this huge loan, 4 months to close, another 8 months rehab, like all my money, everything like that, all my stress. The last thing, as much as I want to be a good person, like it's a business, and I didn't want to risk my new asset by bringing in someone that was subpar.
Absolutely. And maybe another 60-second hack that book talks about. If you become a Bigger Pockets Pro member, you can get lease forms state specific. Yeah. And I have several tenants. I take that landlord form, I take it to my lawyer. We add specific things that we want into it. But that thing is amazing. I mean, you go on there, you can print it off. All you have to do is become a pro member, which is like $30 a month or something.
Yeah, worth it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
I just filled in the blanks on that. That was such a good lease. I didn't have anything to add or change. Super easy to set up. Yeah.
I used a rider on it too.
When you were finding tenants, just curious, because I only used Facebook and I had amazing response on there. Did you list your property anywhere besides Facebook? Any specific websites?
Ooh, man, I'm giving you guys all the goods on this podcast, man. I hope everyone's very appreciative of it.
We're gonna have a lot of links in the description.
So there's I'm not going to say it's in every market. I think the one way to search it is to go to property managers in markets and ask that way. But there's a realtor, I guess a brokerage in my area that they work with local huge employers, right? And they're basically renters. They're basically renters agents. So what they do is all the people that they bring in, they do all the pre-qualification. They do all the income qualification, all that stuff on the front end. They do all the showings. They list it. They do everything for you, and you don't pay them. The renter pays them to get them in. They're rental agents, so they're representing the renter. And I found someone that did that, and they are always looking for landlords. They're basically looking for people to place. They're basically looking for homes to place these people in that fit a certain criteria. So I was very lucky and fortunate in that I didn't have to do showings. I didn't have to do background checks. I didn't have to do any of that. She got them in. She got the security deposit, like everything. So that's something to look out for. Like I would first, and again, it's not in every market, but I mean, it's a no-brainer. If you could find someone that can fill it for you. Again, property management companies might know this. They might be able to do it for you. They'll fill your units up, and you won't have to lift a finger, really.
So to add to your point, I work for General Motors, and so whenever we take in transfers, they have agents assigned for that specific reason.
Yeah.
A lot of people come in and they just rent for a little while, and then if they plan on staying, they'll buy a house. But they don't buy a house right away. They come in and rent. So we have agents as well to help with that transition when we take on new employees.
Yeah, I try to stay away from Craigslist and Facebook as much as possible. Just personally, just because I in my area, I feel like it gets you like not the renters you want. It totally varies by market, like obviously, but you just want to make sure you get a couple, like a family or whoever in there, a couple that's like, working class, has a good W-2 job, like, and I get the direct deposit in my bank every month, man. It's great.
Awesome, Matt. Great. Well, we really appreciate you coming on. We have one last question for you. Where can people find out more about you and more about the 203K loan through you?
Cool, man. Yeah, so I have a couple different places. So obviously how you found me and where I'm really, really active is on Instagram. And you can follow me at the 203K way. We all call it the 203K, but it's 203K. So the 203K way. You can also get a guide. Basically, I'm sure you can attest to this. People ask me a ton of questions about this all the time, and I'm always kind of regurgitating the same info. So I wrote a full-on case study. I wrote on a full step-by-step guide on exactly how you can get started. I hope I showed you guys on this podcast. Like, I don't leave anything out. I like to be as clear and concise as possible. So I was in that guide. You can get a copy of it for free at the203kway.com. And then if you want to go a little deeper, there's some people that want to get a little more information. I did about 12 hours of content in a masterclass, and you can get that at 203kmasterclass.com. And I'm just always willing to help. People can DM me, they can email me, they get their email through my website. I'm just here to really teach people that there's a different way. If you're willing to make the sacrifice, do a couple like paperwork things and everything for the right people, this is just a monster loan, and it's just an amazing way, and it's given me so much. So I want to give back for sure on it.
That's amazing. And I think even today, as we're recording this, you have on your Instagram you're giving away a free one-on-one session today, correct?
Oh yeah, so it's a Labor Day thing, but hey, listen, if anyone comes through on this podcast, mention this podcast interview, and I'll give them the same thing. I just want to, whenever I bring anyone on, I take personal responsibility of making sure that I can do whatever I can to get them there, because it's more important for me to see more people taking advantage of that than anything else.
That's amazing, man. We really appreciate you. You dropped a lot of knowledge bombs today. I learned a lot, and I'm sure Drew did as well. So we really appreciate you coming on.
Yep. Cool. Learned a ton. So much, for our viewers, links are going to be in the description to his website, social media, all that stuff. We appreciate you coming on, Matt.
Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend.
All right, man. You too.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into the House Hacking Success podcast. You can follow us on Instagram at House Hacking Success or visit our website at househacking.success.com. To join our email newsletter, text HouseHack to 22828. That's HouseHack, all one word, to 22828.